Hey everyone, Reflected here. Welcome to the third part of my Phantom tutorials, where I'm going to show you how to perform a proper overhead brake and land the F-4E Phantom in DCS World using real-life procedures, and then what checklists you need to perform once you're down. At the end, we're going to have a look at how to shut down the jet. The first thing you need to take care of before landing is a bit of switchology. Set the bearing distance selector and the HSI course to match the runway heading, so it's easier to judge your downwind turn, making sure that you're in a reciprocal heading. You can also bring up the ILS needles if available. Then adjust the angle of attack tone volume knob on the right hand wall. You should clearly hear it, as it helps a lot. There are many other things you can use your eyes for, but it shouldn't be so loud as to pierce your eardrums. Lastly, I recommend raising the seat all the way. When on speed in landing configuration, the nose is quite high up and you want to see what's ahead. The next task you need to accomplish is to set up for the initial at 300 to 350 knots, 1500 feet AGL. Slightly off to the right of the runway if it's a left-hand brake, or to the left if it's a right-hand brake. It's similar to the Navy's Case 1 recovery. You need to visually verify the runway is clear. Also, check there's no one else in the traffic pattern. Alright, when you reach the approach end, you initiate your brake. If you're in a flight, brake at a 5-second interval. No need to cut the throttle. Just roll into approximately 60 degrees, then pull. Make sure it's a level turn and AOA doesn't exceed on speed, so 19.2 units. If you flew a faster initial, you can use your speed brakes to slow down, but don't forget to close them. Your focus should be on rolling out on the reciprocal heading of the runway at 1500 feet AGL, around 240 knots. After you level your wings downwind and below 250 knots, lower the landing gear and at 220, drop the flaps. Once they're down, your wizard will call, "Okay, gear and flaps are down, check pressures, warning lights and anti-skid." Check gear and flaps are down, anti-skid on, light out, around 3,000 pounds of hydraulic pressures, and the warning lights are out. Then call base. Satan 11 base, gear, full stop, or a beam if you're flying a Navy jet. Downwind, you want to maintain a minimum of 180 knots. 80 to 85% RPM will usually get you there, but that depends on the altitude and stores too. The fuel flow will be around 4,000 pounds per hour. Oh, and don't forget to keep trimming that nose up. When the touchdown point is around 45 degrees aft of the jet, so your wingtip reaches the end of the runway, it's time to start your base turn at around 30 to 45 degrees of bank. Allow the nose to drop slightly and pull. You may need to add the touch of power to maintain a descent of approximately 1500 to 2000 feet per minute. Your base turn should never be slower than on speed, so 19.2 AOA. Keep in mind that as AOA increases, so does adverse yaw, so mainly you'll be using your rudder to roll. As you roll out on final, cut the throttle for a few potatoes to slow down to the approach speed that you calculated based on your weight from the chart in the Dash 1. Then back to about 85-ish%. Today we have around 5,000 pounds of fuel, 3,000 pounds of ordnance. That's a gross weight of around 40,000 pounds, which gives us an on-speed approach speed of 157 knots. Cross-check if you're really flying at this speed when the AOA indicator shows on speed. If not, one of them is broken. Trim the jet to fly on speed hands off, so you don't have to constantly pull, or God forbid, push on the stick. Now your only job is to play with the throttles to maintain a descent rate of about 700 feet per minute. That's a 2.53 degree glide slope. Remember, the stick and trim controls AOA, the throttle controls the descent rate and the glide path. At sea level, the throttle should be at approximately 83%, and your correction should be very small, around plus minus 2-3%. But again, that will vary with elevation. Your fuel flow will be a more reliable reference. Keep in mind that the engines are pointing slightly downwards, so adding power will create a pitch down momentum, and decreasing power will make the jet pitch up slightly. If you get too slow, immediately push the stick forward a bit to decrease AOA. Above 21 units, drag increases drastically, and you won't be able to correct with power. The oral tone should give you plenty of guidance, no need to glance at the AOA gauge. You should fly on speed AOA all the way to touchdown. At an altitude of 20 to 30 feet, ground effect will tend to rotate the aircraft nose down, so you'll need to pull back on the stick slightly to a slightly slow indication. If your approach was too steep, you may want to add a little power too to decrease your rate of descent. As you touch down, make sure you're not pressing on the brake pedals. Keep your heels on the floor. If the pedals are depressed even a little bit, you can blow a tire. So as the jet touches down, deploy the drag chute and bury the stick in your lap for aerodynamic braking. If your approach wasn't too fast, then you don't have to worry about the nose wheel lifting off again. If there's a crosswind, be prepared that it will blow the drag chute away and, consequently, turn the aircraft's nose into the wind. Be prepared to counter with rudder and/or differential braking. You shouldn't really be using nose wheel steering before slowing down to taxi speed, only if really necessary. If the crosswind is too strong, you may even need to jettison the chute while on the runway. As you slow below 30 knots, disengage anti-skid for better braking power. And now, here's the entire landing, uncut. turn off the runway, jettison the chute, and contact ground. You probably also want to open the canopies before it gets too hot. As you taxi back to the ramp, it's time for the after landing checks. Skid off. Command selector valve closed, lower guard up, so the ejection seats are disarmed. This is not yet implemented in DCS. Taxi light set. Flaps up. Drag chute jettisoned. Stab augs off. Internal wing dump normal. ILS off. Red alt off. Flag on. Stab trim down 3 in case the next pilot forgets. Reference system selector standby. Rain removal off. Pitot heat off. IFF off. Temperature full hot to evaporate any water that may have collected in the air conditioning system during descent. Defog foot heat to defog to further raise the temperature. You definitely want the canopies open now. TechAN off. Formation lights off. Side shutter closed. When you arrive to the parking area, tell the crew chief to place the wheel chocks.
Roger.
Then shut down the jet. First, turn off the radio. Raise the seat fully to make it easier to climb out. Defog foot heat back aft to foot heat. Temperature to 12 o'clock. You don't want to cook the next guy. Turn off the right engine. As the engine spools down, the right generator drops offline. When the Argent out light illuminates, turn off the right generator switch. Now check the spoiler actuator. With only the left engine operating and PC2 pressure 0, move the stick 1 inch to the right and verify that the spoiler doesn't fully deflect and it returns to flush when you release the stick.
Okay, partial deflection. Retracted.
Turn off the left throttle, then the left generator switch. Turn off the engine switches. Before you leave the cockpit, look around once more to verify everything is turned off, and set the oxygen to off and the dilute lever to 100%. Take off your helmet, and ask the crew chief to place the ladder so you can climb out. Alright, that's it. That's how you land and shut down the DCS F-4E Phantom using real-life procedures. I hope you find it helpful. You will certainly need to be familiar with all this when you play MiG Killers, my F4 campaign. Don't forget to subscribe for further updates and tutorials. See ya!